So what is up guys, Nick here helping you to master your technology, and welcome to my iPhone 10 full review. Now when you do buy an iPhone 10, one of the first things you're going to notice immediately is that display. Now that display is a 5.8-inch OLED panel that is manufactured by Samsung and will give you a total pixels per inch of 458. Now it does have a nice range of brightness, which is something that we would expect from an Apple device that runs $1,000, and the colors are not oversaturated, they're more balanced, and most people might not even be able to tell the difference between the iPhone 8 display and the iPhone 10 in terms of the colors unless they're looking at the blacks. That's how well calibrated this display is. Now this display is also very sharp. Whether you're reading text on a website or you're reading a book, you are going to enjoy how crisp the text looks to the eye. That's one of my favorite features about this display. Now this display also is oddly smoother than any display I felt on an iPhone before. Even though it's still, other iPhones are smooth, this one just feels a little smoother to me. So overall the display is a win on the iPhone 10. Now the clear elephant in the room here is the notch. We're going to cover that more towards the end of the review, but talking about the body, the build, and the design of the iPhone 10, the first thing you're going to notice is you definitely have a premium phone. The stainless steel sides give this phone a premium feeling not felt on other iPhones, but the glass front and the back also look good, but add a little weight to the phone, make it a little heavier, and this also is a little bit more fragile. But you can see in terms of the size, if you thought that 5.8-inch display was making your iPhone bigger, it's definitely not. It's closer in size to this iPhone 8 or the iPhone 8 you might be looking at as well. So if you want a compact premium iPhone, the iPhone 10 might be right up your alley. But taking a look at it towards the iPhone Plus, you can see this is definitely not a Plus iPhone, and the Plus is pretty much bigger in every way, shape, and form. And this plays into the way it operates on the software. The iPhone 10 is meant to operate more in portrait mode. You don't even get the landscape settings on this phone. But I did like how balanced and light the phone was. It wasn't super heavy for, having a 5.8-inch display. Now that camera on the rear is, a little bit bulging out. You could say it's bulging out more than any other iPhone camera before it, but at least if you put this in a case, it does look pretty flush to the design, which I think most people are going to be using a case anyway, because if you do drop this thing, $279 to repair the screen and $549 if you do drop the back of this thing. So get a case for your iPhone. Now all iPhone 10s, as the recording of this video, will ship with iOS 11. If you're watching this a year from now, you probably will be getting iOS 12. Now the way this phone actually operates and the experience of using it is very different than the past. So first thing you're going to notice is when you unlock your phone, you now use Face ID, which utilizes the true depth sensors up at the top inside of the notch to give you a 1 in a million chance of not getting your phone broken in by using your face data. Now previous iPhones would use Touch ID, which was very fast and secure, and I think a little faster than Face ID. And looking at the older way of operating the iPhone, it's pretty straightforward. You double click the home button to multitask, pull down from the top for notifications. You use the home button for Siri. You also use the side power key to shut your iPhone down. It's very intuitive, very understandable. But here on the new iPhone 10, it's definitely a new type of feel. You got the gesture bar at the bottom for going home. You swipe up to the right to go into multitasking, or you can half press hold down to get into multitasking. And then you could also multitask through your applications by swiping on the gesture bar at the bottom, very similar to a 2-finger swipe on a MacBook Pro, for example, or a Magic Trackpad. Reachability, now you just pull down on the gesture bar, which I found to be a little more inconsistent than double tapping the Touch ID. So reachability is not as useful as it once was on Touch ID in my experience here. You pull up from the right to get to your control center and pull down anywhere from the left to get to your notifications. You use a power up and volume button to go ahead and take a screenshot, or the power button and volume up. To turn off the device, you can use either the volume down key and the power key, or the volume up key and the power key to shut it down. So it's a very different experience, and it's going to be a learning curve for some people. But at the end of the day, I do like the way it does operate. It feels very modern, very futuristic, and it just feels different. And I think most people who are ready to embrace this change will appreciate how polished this operating system feels. Now, it can be updated over time with software. So if you disagree with any of my points here, or you just feel like some of this stuff is just off, this can be updated with software. So that's the nice thing about the iPhone 10. Whereas with the iPhones of the past, you have a Touch ID, which is a hardware key. You can't really optimize that or update it through software updates. So that's nice to see here across this 18:9 display. In terms of battery life, it's been pretty fantastic, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. 6 to 7 hours. It doesn't beat the 8 to 9 hours of on-screen time I've been getting with the iPhone 8 Plus, but it does beat the 5 to 6 that I'm getting on the iPhone 8. So it sits right in between the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. And what's really convenient about iPhone 10, just as it was with iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, is the ability to have fast charging. I will invest in one of these if I was you. And check out this one that I got right here, the RAV Power wireless charger. It's under $50. I got a discount code in the description so you could pick one up for your iPhone 10. It's pretty awesome and charges pretty quickly, and it's going to charge even faster with 11.2. Now, in terms of performance, Apple A11 Bionic chipset with 3 gigabytes of RAM, and this was never really a problem for the past couple of years. Performance, we never really were asking for a bunch of performance increases, but Apple has outdone themselves again in the chip and processor race, because this thing is the fastest iPhone I have ever used. Well, the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus are on the same level, A11 CPU. I'm just saying the A11 is a powerful chip and one of the fastest phones you can buy right now. So at this money, you are getting MacBook level performance on your iOS device. And since we're talking about performance, let's cover the gaming aspect. So this is the first time Apple is putting their own design GPU in their phones, and it really shows. The graphics look really amazing on this smartphone, but the phone is not optimized yet to stretch the screen, so it's a really small gaming experience on iPhone 10. It's more akin to 6S, 7, and iPhone 8, the smaller editions. So keep that in mind if you are picking this phone up as it stands right now. Those might get updated in the future. And we can't make a review without talking about those dual 12 megapixel portrait, telephoto, optically stabilized cameras on the iPhone 10. Also, you have a 7 megapixel camera on the front of this device, and those cameras, they perform really well. You have a little vibrational feedback that operates within the camera itself, and portrait mode is included here. And you can see you have all these new features such as studio light, natural light, contour light, and stuff like that. Live photos remains. It's the basic iPhone software we've been used to for quite some time. I still don't like that you cannot manually change stuff right in the camera software itself, but the nice thing here is that you do have the ability to shoot in multiple different 4K modes, such as 4K at 24 frames per second. You also can shoot at 4K in 30 FPS. As also, you can shoot in 60 FPS, which is super smooth 4K video, which could be downsized for even smoother 1080p video. Now, slow motion, you could have 120 frames per second at 1080 and 1080 at 240 FPS. So the best slow-mo on a phone. And this phone does come with high dynamic range on auto out of the box. So if you don't like HDR mode, you might want to turn that off if you do buy an iPhone 10. But taking a look at some of my samples, you can see just great detail and nice lighting here. Look at the snowman. He's got a lot of good detail in there, very well balanced color, not too much overexposing or anything like that. So I did like this camera overall. The front-facing camera does a good job with the portrait mode as well, which I'm going to show you in just a second here. I did notice that it does tend to blur a little bit on the side edges, but not as, harsh as I've seen on some other devices. It's probably not as good as the Google Pixel 2, but take a look at this photo. I mean, it's definitely professional looking, and if you do a little tweaking, it's going to look pretty good. Now, I also took a sample of the telephoto zoom. I was about 15 feet back from the sign, so that's about the quality you're going to get right there. That's the 2x mode right there, the second one I'm going to show you in a second. Here's the 2x mode, and just look at the detail in the sign there. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal for a smartphone, and I'm not just trying to praise it. I've reviewed a lot of smartphone cameras, and this is sitting right up at the top with the best 1 or 2 cameras on a smartphone right now. And here is the video quality. I mean, the video quality on older iPhones was already good. This one's just maybe a little bit more stable, a little bit better saturated, just slightly better on its colors, but it's not nothing to write home about except for the 4K 60, which is also included on the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. So overall, it's a well-rounded camera package that I think most people and most consumers are just going to love to use on the iPhone 10. You're going to be very happy with this, but to get the most out of your camera, I do recommend you do download a manual camera app so you can go ahead and tweak the ISO and stuff like that to get the best quality you can out of that lens. Now, I'm sure you're asking or wondering about the audio on the iPhone 10. No headphone jack jack, which is always a downside if you ask me. You do have audio on stereo sound on the front and the bottom, and this is one of the best aspects of iPhone 10, whether you're watching a video or you're listening to music or you're doing anything that involves the external speakers of iPhone 10. It's going to be a pretty great experience, and I think this is going to be one of the most noticeable things about your new device is the audio. So overall, great audio package here, besides the fact that you don't have headphone jack, but a lot of people don't really care about that anymore, so that's really down to personal preference. Now, call quality on this phone has been pretty good. The signal strength has been pretty strong for me wherever I was, but what I really enjoyed was the stereo speakers for speakerphone calls. So if you're someone who likes your speakerphone calls, this is going to be a nice upgrade for you. You're going to really like this phone for that, and that's very enjoyable. Also, it's nice to use this dialer because it's very large on this display. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the notch. The question is, does it get in the way? Is it obtrusive? And the short answer is yes and no. So if you are, scrolling through and just using an iPhone, you won't really notice. If you have black in your application, such as the calculator, you won't see much. But if you go into a white application, you're going to see very obviously there is the notch. Now, where it kind of distracted me was when I was reading at night. I love to use the reader mode in Safari, which basically makes the entire browser dark, and it was cutting into my text. Now, I read line at the top down, so every time I would read a line, that would kind of distract me from what I was reading. So I didn't really like that at all, but that really is a very specific case right there. So also when you're in video, if you're watching something, you can zoom in now on YouTube. They just updated their app. You can see that if you have black, it's not really that noticeable, but if you get into a lighter scene, you can see the notch and it might pull your eyes over there. So this is really depends on, are you the type of person where your eye goes to stuff like this? Are you a detailed person? Because if you are, your OCD is going to take you right up to that notch here. And one thing about the notch though, is if anybody sees you using the iPhone and they see that notch, they're going to know, well, that guy's got the iPhone 10. That is the iPhone 10. And I've already had people looking and saying, hey, that guy's got the iPhone 10 already. A couple other things I want to take note of. This device is one of the first iPhones to give you Bluetooth 5.0. You also do have the tap to wake this phone up. Haven't seen that on prior iPhones. It's very similar to the LG G6. And you now have the ability to use True Tone on your device. In addition to that, you get Animojis, which are basically emojis that are going to track your face and give you more of a human-like experience on your phone. In terms of cases and accessories, there's plenty to go around here for iPhone 10. You're never gonna have an issue with this. Is the iPhone 10 worth $1,000 is the question here. And in my opinion, yes, it is, because you have multiple different options now, and this just represents the top of the line for iPhone. You can see this in other markets, such as the camera market. There's cameras at every range of price, laptop market as well, and Apple's got plenty of iPhone for you now. This just represents the best they have to offer. It's a well-rounded package with stainless steel. It's comfortable in the hand. It's got a killer camera at 4K 60, and it feels the price that you're gonna pay for it. So I think you should get insurance with this phone though, because if you do crack it, you're paying almost half of what you already paid to get it. But anyway, to me, yes, this is a worth it price investment if you are going to be using this phone for the long term. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor, click the thumbs up for me. And if you got any comments, questions, concerns, feedback, drop it down below in the comment section of this video. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Be sure to be well, and peace.